So you said the number one trait when looking to hire is coachability there. What are some of the other traits, maybe 2, 3, the order?
Yeah, so the 5 we did were coachability, curiosity, prior success, intelligence, and work ethic. Okay, so before you go crazy on those, I'll caveat that finding with the fact that it gets back to context again. We talked a little bit about context early on. Context matters a lot with your sales hires as well. So I found this out the harder way in year 1. I think it was the 8th hire I made. I hired someone, we were a small company, Series A funded, no one knew about us. And I was able to convince number 1 sales rep in Boston at a public company. They had 800 salespeople on the team that were the number 1 performer. I somehow convinced them to join our company. I was like, this is amazing. This person's going to come in and rewrite the HubSpot sales book for us. And they did. They came in and they didn't do poorly, but they did sort of mediocre. And I reflected on that and I was like, they came from this big public company with a really well-known brand with Super Bowl ads and a value prop that literally took 2 minutes to explain. And that couldn't be more opposite of the HubSpot context at the time, where we were a no-name brand selling inbound marketing software where no one even knew what inbound marketing was. And once you got into it, it was very complicated to explain. And you're really doing an evangelistic sell. So you can imagine that the type of person that would succeed in those 2 environments were very different. So just because the point is, if you understand our hiring formula, it might not be yours. But there is a process for you to understand and sort of engineer your hiring formula over time, right? So essentially what I did was I wrote down the 10 criteria that I thought I should be looking for. And I clearly defined what each one was, what a score of a 1, a 7, a 10 would be. And I was very disciplined about scoring everybody against that criteria. And after you make 4 or 5 hires, and they've been around for 6 months, it's very interesting to go back and look at those observations you made at the interview and compare those to how they're performing. And you'll start to pick up on some qualitative observations of this particular criteria really seems to be predicting success in our environment. And this criteria doesn't. And then you can go beyond your criteria and think of what's missing. And in fact, coachability being our number 1 correlator wasn't even in the first 10 that I established. It took me looking at 4 salespeople that failed, that came from amazing environments. I was like, what is broken? And they just happened to be people who they were pretty resistant to the training, and they locked themselves in in a room somewhere and said, don't worry, I know how to sell, let me try to figure this out. And they didn't, right? So it's that process. And if you go off and scale big companies, it wasn't long, probably 18 months in, where we had enough data to do a regression analysis of those interview scores to success. And that is comforting when you go into a year having to hire 80 salespeople to know that you've got some stats behind you to guide you in that process. Right? So those are the 5, but take it with a grain of salt as to whether they work for you.